Members of the barrio, today I'm going to be answering your questions about visiting New York City for the first time, as well as moving here and how life has changed due to COVID-19. You do not want to miss this. Special thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Goldbelly. Aimey, one of my Patreon members, asks, outside of pizza, bagels, and Junior's cheesecake, what's the one food first-timers to New York City need to try during their visit? I'm gonna give you the same answer that Anthony Bourdain gave in one of his New York City episodes, and that is the deli sandwich, the pastrami, the corned beef on rye. You cannot go wrong with that. In fact, some would argue that is the one thing that New York does better than any place else. My personal pick for that would be to go to Sarge's Deli. You will not regret it. And Sarge's also ships on Goldbelly. Bruce, one of my Patreon members, would you informally rank the 5 observation decks from best to last? In my opinion, Summit OV is the best because I find your traditional observation deck overdone. I mean, they're very common in most US cities around the world. I think they're neat, but Summit adds a little something to the mix that none of the other observation decks I've ever been to have done, which is having the interactive experiences and still having a very nice view outside. I'd rank Summit number 1. If you're a traditionalist and you just want that classic observation deck experience, I would put Top of the Rock as my second choice because I love the views there, especially around sunset. Number 3, I would go with the Edge. Even though in the past I have ranked it higher than Top of the Rock, but I've changed my mind on it. I think the Edge is neat because of its unique location on the west side of Manhattan, and I like the, the glass that you can look down through. Granted, Summit OV has that right now as well. So I think after Summit opened, the Edge actually dropped a bit on my list. I think it's a cool experience, but I would put it as number 3. Empire State Building, number 4. That is the classic observation deck in New York. If you just need that experience, if you're into buildings and architecture, you'll probably like it a lot. Went to the Empire State Building around sunset, was incredible. And 5th, I would rank One World Observatory, although if the weather is not cooperating or it's dead of winter and it's freezing outside and you don't want to go outside at all, One World would be a good option. So I like them all for their own unique aspects, but I would rank Summit still as my top choice. Brent, one of my Patreon members, asks, not to be negative, but do you have any NYC experiences that you find incredibly overrated? I don't want to ruffle too many feathers here, but there are some destinations that I think get a lot of love from tourists because they're the ones that are the most famous. I'm not saying they're bad spots, and I'm not saying don't go there. I just think there's better options. Let's start with Katz's Deli. I'm a fan of it. I love the history. I love the nostalgia, but I do not think it is the best pastrami on rye sandwich in New York City. Another one, Junior's Cheesecake. I have had better cheesecake in New York City. I went to the original Junior's once in Brooklyn. It wasn't bad, but I've had better. We're gonna go with the New York City Attraction Pass. I follow many Facebook forums, and it seems like everybody's talking about getting one of these unlimited attraction passes. I do think it's overrated, though, to follow a list of attractions just because it's included in the price. You're not gonna get the real New York City experience that way. You're gonna get the tourist experience. If you could only visit one NYC attraction, what would it be? That is such a good question. My answer is actually not possible at the moment. I would say going inside the crown of the Statue of Liberty because, first of all, you're gonna see Ellis Island after, you're gonna see all the Statue of Liberty, and you're gonna go inside one of the most important monuments in American history, and you're gonna be inside the crown, a surreal moment. I will tell you, one of the most surreal moments I've ever had was going in the crown, but it's not open right now due to COVID. Keep checking their website. I hope it opens soon. My question is, does anybody go to New York City just for the fun of it? Probably half the people watching this video. Jorge Garcia with a great question. How do residents get groceries in Midtown Manhattan? I didn't see any supermarket when I visited. I mean, there aren't supermarkets on every single block in Manhattan like there are bodegas or delis, but there are plenty of supermarkets there. It's actually pretty easy in Manhattan because most people don't have cars. A lot of people will just do delivery. Here in Brooklyn, we bring our carts to the supermarket. How often does garbage get picked up? Saw many garbage bags on sidewalk daily. I've noticed that more in Manhattan than in Brooklyn, but where we live in Brooklyn right now, garbage is picked up twice a week, and most people are courteous enough to move their bags to the street the night that garbage is going to be picked up, so it isn't as unsightly. I lived in the Village. Over there, it was disgusting in the summer how many garbage bags were outside. Not a good look for Manhattan, I have to admit. Christopher from Patreon asks, which rules do you expect the government will impose due to the new COVID variant? Well, President Biden just announced today that to enter the United States, you need to have a negative COVID test within 24 hours of your flight, or within 1 day. This will affect everybody entering the US, including US citizens like myself if I leave the country to come back. So entering New York, you are gonna have to have a negative COVID test sooner than in the past. Now, you all know how I love supporting local businesses, and with Goldbelly, you can eat from restaurants all over the United States, right in the comfort of your own home. This is something really, really unique. The sponsor of today's video, Goldbelly, wants us to show you exactly how this is done. It comes right to your door in boxes. It's already cooked, it's refrigerated, it has ice packs, super simple. Just put it in your fridge, and we have ordered from spots all over the United States. This is such an amazing gift idea if you want to give people the gift of New York City. Guess what? They've got bagels, they've got pizza spots. We're even eating from the famous Veselka on the Lower East Side. As part of our Goldbelly experience, you can do the same. Imagine gifting this to somebody, or just bring a part of New York City to you. Yeah, totally possible. All this prep here took about 15 minutes for every single place we ordered from. There was not a lot of prep, you just have to eat.
It's a little messy looking. This is what happens when John makes the lobster rolls.
This is actually really hard to find in New York City. Good lobster rolls like this. Living in New York, a place that's not really well known for barbecue, having the ability to order King's Barbecue out of North Carolina, a little pulled pork. Let's try this out. This would probably be better than most pulled pork sandwiches you could find in New York, that's for sure. I mean, how cool is this? We have food from all over the United States sitting in front of us, from Maine to North Carolina to New Orleans to even Veselka, New York City, which we're about to eat. This is like the ultimate group activity for a special occasion. Many of you watching this are familiar with Veselka, which is a really famous Ukrainian restaurant on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. You can order this directly to your home. Now, I have actually eaten there before, so we got this delivered like somebody living in Nebraska would get this delivered. So we have the meat pierogies here. Just had to boil them, super simple. Let's try this. This is what they're world famous for. Definitely my favorite pierogies in all of New York City. Go to Veselka, but if you can't make it to Veselka, order it off Goldbelly. Everything we've eaten on this segment is available in the description to order if you want to check out some of the other offerings from Goldbelly. All linked down below in the description. Thanks a lot. Josh from NY, hope you're doing well, buddy. Should visitors stay around Times Square? This is a tricky question. Now, I want to say no, because Times Square is full of most of the tourist traps and scams of New York City. But for a first-time visitor to New York, as long as you're armed with that knowledge, you are in the most central location to everything. A lot of tourist attractions are within walking distance, and it's just going to make your life easier. Problem is, the hotels in Times Square are also very expensive. So if money is no object, you could stay by Times Square. If you're on a budget, I think that is where you're gonna start to run into problems. But overall, for a first-time trip, I would have no issue with somebody choosing to stay in Midtown Manhattan, because it's just gonna make your trip most convenient. Crystal K from Patreon, hope you're well. What is a hidden gem restaurant that is so good, but no one creator seems to give it any love? So there's one spot that is just starting to get a lot of attention because Barstool reviewed it. It's Luigi's Pizza in South Slope. This place is the epitome of an old school classic pizza joint in New York City. No frills, and it's incredible. The owner there, one of the most down-to-earth owners in New York City I have ever met. And people don't mention Luigi's in the same statement as DeFara, as Lucali's, as Giuliana's, as Grimaldi's, but I will put Luigi's up there with all of those spots for their quality. So that's the under-the-radar place. If we're gonna call it a pizza spot or restaurant that I would definitely encourage more of you to go to. We covered it on a video when I was eating with Mary Jane, the Italian YouTuber, and she loved it as well. What are the top 3 things to do in Central Park? In no particular order, visiting Bethesda Terrace to see the fountain and the Minton tiles. Then I would say Sheep's Meadow to have a picnic, which is a very local thing to do. And also going to the Conservatory Garden on the north side of Central Park, which is by far the least touristy of those things I mentioned, and one of the better hidden gems of New York that does not get enough attention. Mark Finley from Patreon, hope you're well, Mark. Favorite day trip away from New York City? You know, one that I really enjoyed, which we didn't make a day trip, but you easily could make a day trip, I would say Philadelphia, because it's less than 2 hours by Amtrak, and you can go in the morning, eat some amazing food, eat some cheesesteak, eat a lot of stuff, go explore the historical sites, and head back at night, and you don't have to get a hotel even. Is crime really that bad in New York? My husband and I are born and raised Montanans from a small town. We'd like to make a trip to New York sometime next year. What are some things we should look out for? I actually spent 2 summers in Great Falls, Montana, so I know exactly where you're coming from. I think crime is overplayed in the media. Crime stats have gone up after COVID, but it hasn't made as much news of late. I would say being aware of your surroundings is the most obvious thing that you can do. Always paying attention to where you are, since you don't really know New York City that well. Now, enough tourists have come back that I think that if you stay in the areas where most people are, most tourists are, I don't think you're gonna run into any trouble, but just be aware of your surroundings. And I would say taking the subway late at night, especially if you're by yourselves, maybe be a little bit careful of that if you're not confident riding the subway. But other than that, I think you're gonna have a great time. Jasmine Apple with a good one. I'm coming to NYC to see a play in February. Besides the obvious museums, what kind of tourist things can you do without freezing your biscuits to death? I love that, freezing your biscuits to death. I'm gonna start using that. Opportunities for shopping. There's some really nice movie theaters here. Food. I mean, there's so many food choices here. I'd probably consider visiting some of the food halls of New York. DeKalb Market, very underrated, I think would be a cool spot to visit for you. Also, some of the observation decks are just fine indoors. One World Observatory comes to mind, even Summit OV. Most of the activities are indoors, so I think any of those things would be cool, as well as a New York Public Library. Controversial topic, but how realistic is it to have a great time in NYC and eat well with no vaccination card? In the winter, it's going to be very difficult for many reasons, and I'll give you a story here. I was just with a friend who was not vaccinated, and we went out in Bushwick, which is a very popular neighborhood, to eat. I found a couple of places that had outdoor seats with heat lamps, and it was so cold out that we didn't want to sit at any of them. Luckily, we found a spot where it was outdoors, but it was in a patio, and it had some cover and had a heat lamp, so that was okay. So I'd say that if you come to New York and you're not vaccinated, you're gonna have to do a lot of research about what restaurants will have outdoor seating that you won't freeze your biscuits off. But keep in mind, you won't be able to go to Broadway, you won't be able to go to any museums, you won't be able to go to movie theaters, a lot of entertainment spots. It would be easier in warm weather months to pull this off, but in the winter, you're gonna have to do a lot of planning. Now it's your turn. Any questions that I missed about moving to New York, visiting New York, ask me in the comments and I'll try to answer as many as I can. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, till next time.